Good morning, Keller Williams. Happy Wednesday. Little Whitney Houston for you, the late, great Whitney Houston, covering the not late, but still great Chaka Khan. Hope that got your feet moving and your blood pumping this morning. Hey, a big, huge thank you to everybody who joined us yesterday for our first of two gratitude feasts. It was a feast indeed, with lots of good fun, friends, and food. So if you missed yesterday, do join us tomorrow. We have our second gratitude feast. That one's happening at 2777 Summer Street in Stamford. Bring your favorite side. And you know, it's funny because we kind of steered so many people away from desserts, because we usually have more desserts than we know what to do with, that we ended up with like no desserts yesterday. Luckily, we did have a few, including that Michelle Sperry thing. Is Michelle on the call? Man, oh man, whatever Michelle made, that I don't know what it was, but it was really good. So maybe Michelle will make it again and we can all have it again tomorrow. So we'll see you tomorrow. Do bring your favorite Thanksgiving side and some desserts, because you have to have pie. Come on, it's Thanksgiving. All righty, so we are Wednesday, which means our friends at Guaranteed Rate are queued up. And I think I see my dear friend, Jose Vladimir. Jose, good morning.
Good morning, Rick. How are you? Good morning, everybody. And happy Wednesday. Happy December 1st. Can you believe that? December 1st. It's hard to believe that we are now in December and we are 3 weeks away from Christmas. I hope that I've been a good boy and hopefully I'll get some good Christmas. If not, I'll get my Lampo call and I'll keep going for next year. Always trying to improve, right? I am Jose Vladimir from Guaranteed Rate Affinity, and I am very happy to be here with you this morning. So our conversation for today is inflation. Inflation is here and it is no longer transitory. Yesterday, we repriced several times. And so what does that mean? It means that inflation is the increase in value or cost of goods and services. Things are getting more expensive. I'm sure you know that. If you're going shopping for Christmas, if you're going getting your gasoline, you know it's very expensive. Inflation is here, and eventually it's going to trickle down to our mortgage rates. And that's what happened yesterday. We had incredible repricing many times. But not to fear, according to the National Association of Realtors, interest rates for 2022 are expected to be around 3.5%. At the moment, today, rates are at 3.25%. Still very competitive, still very good. And it is my hope that the federal government will continue to help our industry. The federal government actually buys a lot of real estate mortgage-backed securities to make sure that interest rates remain competitive. And hopefully they will continue to do so. Real estate is a very important and very integral part of our economy. And I believe that the government will continue to put their thumb on the scale to make sure that we remain very competitive. With that said, it is very important, please, that when you talk to your customers, that you encourage them to get pre-approved, not pre-qualify, not some lousy online pre-approval. Please get them pre-approved by one of your trusted lenders. If that privilege is given to me or to any of your other lenders, please encourage your customers to get fully vetted. And what do we need? 2 years employment with little to no employment gap. We need a decent credit score. A credit score between 600 and 680 more than likely will put that customer in an FHA program. A credit score of 680 or higher will give them a better interest rate and it will put them in a conventional mortgage program. What else do we need? We need the customer to have a little bit of money. They don't need to have a 20% down payment, but it is a good idea for them to have some money so they can cover some of their early costs that are related with the mortgage process and buying their home. If money is an obstacle, they don't have to fear. There are many ways to make the transaction work. The seller can provide seller credit, which can be either a true seller credit or a credit that is built up into the transaction. A realtor can provide credit. The lender can provide credit as well. And of course, there are down payment programs that can assist. And finally, mom and dad, family members, they can also help your transactions. I hope you find this information useful. If you have any questions about this or any other topics related to financing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to any of my colleagues. I am happy to help you. I am Jose Vladimir from Guaranteed Rate Affinity, wishing you a wonderful Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. We appreciate you as always. My favorite thing that you said this morning was, yeah, you actually have to have money to buy a house. Oh, by the way, you actually have to have money. There's lots of different ways to deal with that money, but you actually have to have some money. Imagine that. Who knew? All righty. You know, it's funny. Speaking of having money, Steve and I have been looking at mortgages in different countries, just in case the opportunity arises for either an investment property or whatever property. And there are some countries around the world, man, holy cow, like Portugal. I don't know if any of you have ever explored buying in Portugal. Like 100% financing at rates less than 1% for investment properties. Craziness.
And like 40-year amortizations.
Yeah, it's like you pay no money to own property. All righty. So a couple of quick announcements other than interest rates in Portugal. We have 9:30 today. Debbie Orr continues her business builders, so do jump in on that. And then, of course, at 1 o'clock today, we do have James Shaw continuing his 12 weeks of listings. He has 2 additional interviews lined up for you today. It's 30 minutes of your time, but it's really, really awesome. So do tune into this Zoom room. I will broadcast that live in this Zoom room. James Shaw interviewing 2 top listing agents from around the country at 1 o'clock today. And of course, as I mentioned, tomorrow is our second gratitude feast, 12 noon at 2777 Summer Street. We will see you there. Okay, so it's funny, this has come up a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and then it came up yesterday on this call. So what a better day to, no better day to address it. And that is the conversation around, how do I get paid? What should I expect in terms of getting paid when there are manipulations, if you will, in the purchase price for a house? And so, as you know, situations do arise where the purchase price for a property is manipulated to get the deal done. And sometimes that looks like seller concessions, where the seller accepts an offer for higher than what the buyer is offering, and then concedes that add-on back to the buyer to help the buyer cover their closing costs. Right? That ultimately allows the buyer to finance their closing costs. It's the way to get the closing costs worked into the mortgage, instead of having those costs paid out of pocket. The point, though, is the seller is accepting, $10,000 higher on the contract and then conceding that back to the buyer. How do we get paid in a circumstance like that? There are other scenarios, like if the deal's already negotiated and something comes up, say an inspection item or something like that, where this results in the seller giving the buyer a credit. Right, so the deal's agreed to at $500,000, and then prior to the closing, the seller and the buyer agree that the buyers will get a credit for $10,000. Do we get paid on the $500,000 or do we get paid on the $490,000? Right, so here's my thought, because I get asked this question all the time, and so I want you to just be prepared for the probable answer. Now, please remember, like anything, there's no like rule or law that says this is how you get paid. The answer to these questions, like so many other questions in our industry, ultimately is, well, it depends. What did the parties work out? What was negotiated? Right? But to give you a better answer than it depends this morning, generally speaking, you can expect to get paid on the net amount. That is what you can expect to get paid on, right? And what that means is the net amount is going to be the actual dollar amount the seller is going to put in their pocket. So in a scenario where the price was increased and then that same amount conceded back to the buyer, well, if the contract says 510 and they're giving a $10,000 credit back to the buyer, you shouldn't expect to get paid on the 510. Even though you wrote the contract for 510, the net to the seller is going to be 500 in that scenario. And so you should expect to get paid a commission off of the $500,000. Just like a scenario where in order to get the deal done, a seller agrees to a credit back to a buyer. Oftentimes that then has the seller saying, well, I'll agree to that $10,000 credit. However, I'm going to pay commissions only on the 490, not the 500. Right? And I see a lot of you nodding your heads. This is not new and groundbreaking news, right? However, I get asked the question all the time, and many of you seem surprised by the answer. And so I want to just kind of make the blanket statement that generally speaking, this is what you can expect. Now, it's not the case all the time. There are times when, depending on what's negotiated and how, that you may get paid on the gross. In those scenarios, my advice to you is smile and move forward, right? But expect to get paid on the net. When you're on the listing side, so two paths of advice, and then I'll take questions. When you're on the listing side, and this scenario pops up, please have that discussion with your seller so that they know and you know what everyone can expect, right? The worst part about these conversations is that they oftentimes either never happen or they happen 24 to 48 hours prior to a closing. And then everybody's hair is on fire because nobody thought to have the conversation earlier. And then there's either selective amnesia about a conversation that happened, or there's disagreement about who they should get paid on what, right? So do it all up front. If you're a listing agent, understand what the seller's expectations are on that, and then follow through. If the seller decides that they're interested in putting this deal together in such a way that they pay on the net, the lower amount, and you agree to that, well, then you need to take that to the buyer's agent. Like, as that conversation is finishing with the seller, you need to be on the phone with the buyer's agent to say, here's how we can put all this together. Please note, your brokerage will need to agree to get paid on the net, on the 490 number. Are you in agreement with that? Yes, great. We'll send over a document, right? And that's the piece that a lot of us don't follow up with. We have the conversation, but we don't put it in writing, right? Selective amnesia is a real thing, especially when money is involved. People decide that they didn't have that conversation, or they remember a conversation very differently when it comes to getting paid. So be proactive. And make those create clarity around that scenario. If you're on the buy side, ask. I know that's a crazy concept, right? Ask the question of the listing agent, right? If I'm on the other side of one of Jeannie's deals and we're putting it together and there's a big credit involved, I'm going to ask the question, Jeannie, what can we expect to get paid on? And either Jeannie's had the conversation with the seller and knows the answer, or we'll then go and have a conversation with the seller so that she knows and I know and everybody's aware way before we get to 24 to 48 hours prior to the closing, right? Here's my last piece of advice on this. You're usually talking about $100 to $200, right? Differential here. No one's getting rich or going broke either way off of the small adjustments that sometimes get made in how our commissions are calculated. I'm not saying don't want to get paid. I'm saying recognize that as an industry, generally speaking, we typically get paid on the net. the seller. I'll give you another example. In our market centers, we profit share, right? Okay, our market centers calculate as an expense the amount of tax money that we have to pay to the IRS and to the state as an expense before we get to figuring out how much profit share we're going to pay. We don't pay profit share dollars off of money that we just have to give to the government, right? That wouldn't make sense. Just like it doesn't make sense for a seller to pay commission on money they're not actually receiving. So I hope that puts things in perspective for you, right? And gives you the idea that, so my last piece of advice is don't create drama around it. Don't be in a huff, right? Right, because when you're in a huff around it, it usually means that you didn't do what you needed to do up front to get clarity around your own commission. You had an expectation, you made an assumption, which then turned into emotion just before the closing. So don't do that. Ask up front, get clarity, know what the answers are. Some of you don't ask the questions because you don't want to know the answers. Well, you can't play that game and then show up 24 hours before the closing and be upset, right? You've got to take the proactive approach. And remember, it's just business. It's not personal. It's not a conspiracy against you. It's just business. And we typically get paid on the seller's net. Dana, what's the question?
Actually, it's not a question. This did have an anecdote, because this did happen to me recently on a big scale, because it was an antique house. A lot of issues came up, including the one we all dread most. The septic was about to fail. So it was going to be about a $50,000 concession, which then became, the lawyers turned it into a $50,000 price reduction, because then I was representing the sellers, and then they would pay a little lower on their fees to the town, because it dropped the price to the high sevens, some of the low eights. And my client felt so guilty that this was affecting my commission, even though when I did the math relative to what the deal was bringing me, it wasn't really that much. And I said, no, don't worry. And she was like, well, I want to take care of you. What can I do? And I just said to her, well, just tell all your friends you have the best realtor in Fairfield County and that they should use me. But
well done.
It makes you look good.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And in Dana's example, right, I know of some examples where a seller decides not to pay on the lower, because they do want to be certain that you are taken care of. And so you can go the route that Dana went to say, you know what, no, I insist, and just let's just pass some additional business. And sometimes the sellers say, no, we're paying on the higher number, which is why I say this is a generally speaking conversation, because every scenario is slightly different. Guys, I hope that is helpful to you. I hope that you're put in these positions all the time, because it just means you're doing tons and tons of business, right? And remember, it's not a conspiracy against you. It's just business. Smile, say yes, and move on and sell another house. Have a spectacular day today. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.